What is the big concern? What are we upset about?
The biggest concern is that there is a movement by a very small group of people to take control of the St. Patrick's Day Parade. St. Patrick's Day Parade was started in 1762. It's older than the country, and it has been always run to promote Irish culture, Irish beliefs, the heritage of how proud we are to be Irish. And a dimension of that is being Roman Catholic. It's not exclusive, but that's a part of it. We have a group now that has decided that they would like to make the parade under their particular bailiwick. And so, as many of us believe, and I think the evidence supports it, contrary to the constitutions, contrary to how the committee should function, they have ignored that and gone their own way and managed to maneuver. I mean, it sounds very dramatic, but the word that comes to mind is coup. They are taking over the parade and removing the voices of all kinds of membership of individuals and county associations and Irish associations that have always had a voice in the parade. And suddenly this is no longer the case. The parade had been run for years and years and years by the Ancient Order of Hibernians. And in 1992, for a variety of reasons, it was decided, and the AOH agreed, they thought this was a good idea, to create a parade committee, a formal incorporated structure that would manage the parade. Because of the traditional role of the AOH, many of the provisions of the bylaws were specific to include AOH members. And for some of the roles, that was part of the qualification. And the idea was to make sure that even though it was a legal structure, that there were opportunities for the voices to be heard from the different members of the community. Well, what's happened now is one man who had been vice chairman has moved in, and again, many of us believe, based on all of the evidence that we have, all of the people that we've talked to, in violation of the Constitution and bylaws of the committee, has installed himself as chairman and is about to, at their next board meeting, throw out many of the provisions of the bylaws that define and delineate what this parade is, in the minds of many of us, all about. That it's Irish, that it's cultural, and we are terribly scared about what the parade is going to turn into.
Why this coup? What is the goal?
Well, that would call for a degree of mind reading that I do not possess. There are some who suggest that because 2016 is the 100th anniversary from the Easter Uprising, the great first movement in Irish independence, that because of that, this will be a special parade, and this man particularly wants the spotlight. I don't know. He's the president of a university, and so he knows about spotlight. That maybe that there is something personal that he has against the parade, against the former chairman of the parade. And that's speculation. I have no hard evidence of that. What I do know is what's going on and what's going to be going on. The motives, it's all speculation because I really don't know, and I don't know that anybody does.
And you're referring to Dr. Leahy?
Dr. Leahy, Dr. John Leahy, who is the president of Quinnipiac.
Now, what would happen if the affiliated organizations are removed, if you no longer have this vote, this democratic voice?
Well, are you the sort of a person who thinks the glass is half full or half empty?
News.
We can imagine all sorts of things. We can imagine the whole character of the parade be changing so that it is no longer Irish, so that it no longer has a special place for the Catholic nature, which historically has always been part of it. It could be that actions would be taken against people who have spoken out against this move. I mean, we don't know. We truly don't know. Historically, there's been a group that's nominated the Grand Marshal for the parade, and then the affiliate voices, the different memberships, name the aides. And so you have 10 or 12 or 14 aides to the Grand Marshal who represent the different voices in the community. Well, according to what they're planning to do, if they are successful, they apparently will no longer be able to name those aides. Will there be aides or will that be eliminated? If there are aides, who gets to name them? We don't know what the process is because as far as we can tell, that process is going to be eliminated.
Mm-hmm. Going back to what you mentioned a little bit earlier, is this, we see in some of the proposals is to take out the requirement for people on the board be Irish, that people on the board be Catholic.
Right.
Is this an attack against the Catholic identity of the parade?
I would certainly think so. Now, I'm wearing the suit. I'm a Jesuit priest. So admittedly, I have a point of view, but I'm also Irish. You know, my grandmother was born in Ireland. My family is Irish. My mother's maiden name was Meehan, and I'm a Sheehan. So, dear God, yes, you know. And I'm very proud of being Irish. I went to the University of Notre Dame, for heaven's sake. It's part of who I am. And I think you will find that not only has the Irish population been critical in New York history from 1762, when the parade was first founded, up to today, and we are all very proud of that. The organizations, we have county associations, we have athletic associations, we have cultural associations. The amount of Irish dance that goes on in this area is breathtaking. The amount of Irish music and Irish culture, plays. There are 2 very busy, very active Irish centers that are doing Irish culture and presenting Irish plays in an association with groups in Ireland, bringing groups over and sending groups back to there. So the role of the Irish in the city continues to be terribly important today, and this parade is one of the great focal points, one of the great celebrations of what it is to be Irish, what it is to be Catholic. And not to the exclusion, there are certainly Irish Protestant groups that have marched, but the history of the parade was always that it was focused on Irish and cultural and Catholic. And if you didn't fit into that, you know, you weren't part of the parade. But Lord knows in New York there are enough other parades for people to march in. You know, I march in 4 parades a year because I'm a member of a labor's union. I march in the Veterans Day parade. There are lots of parades. And because St. Patrick is perhaps the biggest and most popular, there are people who would like to be a part of it. Fair enough. But right now, we don't know, to go back to your question, I don't know what the parade would be like under the control of a very few group of people who have decided to bypass what was a structure and an organization and a set of constitutions. Well, if they're willing to bypass that, what comes next? And I don't know the answer to that question, but it makes me really nervous.
Now, going back to the idea, like, what is this? Is this an anti-Catholic coup? What is happening right now?
In the items that they wish to delete, if I can read a little, there's a section that says members of the board of directors shall be Roman Catholic of Irish descent. Well, that's going to be gone. That will be removed. There's a thing that says the parade will be held in honor of St. Patrick, the patron saint of the Archdiocese of New York and the patron saint of Ireland. That will be removed. There are 7 provisions that certify that to be part of the parade, you've got to be, you know, Irish and interested in upholding the values and traditions of the New York St. Patrick's Day parade, and that's all gone. The officers of the parade and celebration committee shall be elected by delegates from the affiliated units. Well, that will be gone. So it certainly could be interpreted as an attack on Catholics. It could equally be interpreted as an attack on Irish, quite honestly. And since it's the St. Patrick's Day parade, this is one of the many things that concerns us.
Why do you think they're focusing on these sections that are specifically Catholic, that are specifically declare Irish people must be on the board?
Because they would like, and again, this is my interpretation. This is what I gather from talking to people who've been involved with the parade for many more years than I have, and from what I have read in the documents that have been provided, and that's just fact. I mean, there's a lot of fact there. And my interpretation of it is that this is a group of people who, for whatever reason, want very tight, absolute control. They don't want to have to deal with a lot of different voices. They don't want dissenting opinions. It was said that at one meeting when Dr. Leahy told a board member that he was not allowed to come into the meeting, this is someone who's a member of the board, when he protested, Dr. Leahy's response was, reportedly, we'll interpret the bylaws. Okie dokie. So, again, to try to ascribe motives to this is guesswork. And I'm a little reluctant to do that because I think it tends to muddy the waters. You know, it may be an anti-Catholic move. I can't speak to that, but I can speak to the fact that it is a move contrary to the Constitution that will eliminate the voices of a lot of people who have historically created and managed and been a part of this parade. And we think that it is terribly unfair to the many, many years. I mean, there are people who are involved in the parade now who have been going to the parade for 50 and 60 years. I remember, sure, and when I was 2 years old, they took me to my first parade. And we've got guys like that and women like that. And it's a critical part of the community for many, 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 many people. And to have it suddenly be put under the thumb of 6 or 8 or whatever their final number is, seems like a terrible injustice.
If you delete these sections, if the parade is no longer, quote, held in honor of St. Patrick, what is it?
That's a question that a lot of people have asked. And I suspect that I would think they would keep the name, the St. Patrick's Day Parade, at least for a year or two. Somebody once said, they were reading these documents a couple of days ago, and they said, well, in a couple of years it's going to be the Celebrate Ireland Parade, Catholics need not apply. And that's the fear. There was a time, and one of the things that former Chairman John Dunleavy did very successfully was he cleaned up the parade. He gave the parade a dignity that it did not always have. There was a time, and I can remember, when drunken revelers, and especially young people, and they're staggering down the street, and they've got green glittery shamrocks strapped to their heads, and it was a circus. And there wasn't a lot of Irish pride in it. And historically, the Irish have always been the subject of caricatures and vaudeville jokes, and I mean, that's fine, we understand that. But for something like this parade, the purpose of this parade is to celebrate how proud we are of being Irish. And Dunleavy, God love him, whatever else you may agree or disagree with, he cleaned up the parade. He worked with the New York City Police Department, who were terrific, and the drunks weren't allowed to march. And a number of the Catholic schools that had closed historically on St. Patrick's Day, for a while, they stayed open because all that was happening was their students were going out and getting drunk. Well, this wasn't the reason for it. And John Dunleavy managed to clean up the parade and restore that sense of dignity. I would hate to see the door be opened so that we lost that again, because we are proud of being Irish. And if you want to have a drink before the parade, you want to have a drink after the parade, God love you, that's fine. I've been known to take a drop of the creature myself, I have. But that's not it. The idea is very much that this is a moment of Irish pride. And we don't want to lose that. We don't want to lose the Irish, and we don't want to lose the pride, and this seems that it opens the door to losing both.
Now, I lost my question. You said that the purpose of the parade is to celebrate how proud we are. And you also mentioned a really interesting phrase, Catholics may not apply. Are we going back to the age of Catholics may not apply?
There are people who will tell you that in this day and age, irrespective of the parade, irrespective of this particular issue, that there are people in places of authority who would like to minimize or attack or diminish or change the Roman Catholic Church. I suspect there is evidence to support that contention. I have no evidence that this is particularly directed at that, but it is certainly going to be one of the effects, I think. Again, we're back to that very nebulous question of motive that I can't really answer. I'm a Jesuit, and Jesuits are practical, and we try to stick to the facts. And the facts are that the way this is being handled and what will happen if these deletions occur and if these people are able to take over the parade, what will happen is that becomes a real possibility. And that's, in terms of fact, that's all I can say. Is that why they're doing it? I don't know. St. Ignatius, who founded the Jesuits, said that if you're not sure of a man's motives, you are obliged to put the best possible interpretation on it. All right, fair enough. In that case, then I see it as just a power grab, and it's not necessarily directed against Catholics. That's the best possible interpretation. That's pretty scary, if you ask me. If that's the best possible interpretation I can put on it, that's kind of terrifying,
Is this a continuation? We saw last year the first gay group marching in the parade openly under their own banners. Is this a continuation of what we saw last year?
No. I think that might have been the wedge that Dr. Leahy, who was very in favor of that, used when he moved against Mr. Dunleavy, who was very opposed to that. It was never an anti-gay issue for the parade. The parade always had a policy that groups that were not particularly focused on being Irish and Catholic didn't march under their own banner. The American Legion never marched in the parade. The Knights of Columbus never marched in the parade. The pro-life groups never marched in the parade because for a long, long time they did not want it to be political. England out of Ireland never marched in the parade because that's a political statement they wanted to avoid. So it was never an anti-gay movement. And I am sure that for decades there have been gay people marching in the parade. It was just a question of marching under a banner. And that's what they were opposed to, and that's what the groups wanted to do. All right, that's a fair conflict. I think that issue has probably been settled. I don't think you're going to go backwards on that one. Fair enough. That's not the issue today. Historically, was it the first point of the division between Dr. Leahy and Mr. Dunleavy? It may well have been. That may well have been. But it's not what's going on now. And I think it tends to muddy the water a little bit. And I understand, no offense to the media, but it's an easier headline to write. You pick a point of controversy and you go with it. And that's fine, and it certainly was a controversy, and there are still people who are very upset about that. And that conversation is not going to die in my lifetime, and I hope to live many years. But this is a different conversation. It really is. It's not about Dunleavy, and it's not about whether gays march under their own banners. It's control of the parade and what it can mean to what the parade has historically been. For the third time, I will say it, since 1762. This is a long-established tradition, and we hate to see it turned into something else by a very small group of people. Look, if all of the Irish who were involved got together and voted to change the parade, fair enough. That's a different topic of conversation. But what's happened is that all those voices are going to be silenced.
For the last question, now, this meeting that's coming up tomorrow,
right.
Is this something that they discuss? Is this something that they vote on? How do they choose whether or not to go forward and delete these sections?
It's a board meeting, and the unknown question is, we don't even know where the board meeting is going to be. The last time there was a board meeting, it started at the New York Athletic Club. People spoke up against what was going on, and Dr. Leahy picked up and moved the meeting to the Metropolitan Club, and people who were board members were not allowed to go in. They were told to leave. Well, that's contrary to the Constitution. So, but what we expect to happen is that the board, as interpreted apparently by Dr. Leahy, will meet, and these items are on the agenda, and it says discussion and approval/disapproval of various organization and governance changes in particular, and then they lay them out. So I think they will vote on them. And given that the members who are being admitted are rather handpicked by Dr. Leahy, I suspect that unless a lot of public opinion rises up, unless a lot of people send notes to the Quinnipiac Board of Directors and to other people, I would suspect that these things will probably pass. I have heard that there is someone has filed a temporary restraining order, or filed for a temporary restraining order, to have this postponed until the legality of what Dr. Leahy is doing can be addressed in a legal forum, because this is a legal corporation. This is not a woman's club of, Lower Bronx somewhere. This is a legal corporation, and the question is, some of the actions that have been taken to date are manifestly, we believe, illegal, contrary to that, and the legality of those actions should be heard in a court. And that's what they're trying to do, is to postpone their taking of this action until that can be ruled upon. What happens if that is not granted? What happens if the board meets and they pass all of this? Well, there's a bridge in the future, and we'll have to cross it when we get to it. And I suspect that there are lawyers who are delighted to jump in and give us further advice.
When you say we, you're talking about yourself and the affiliated organizations?
I'm talking about, I'm in a strange position, because on the one hand I represent nobody and I represent everybody. I was asked to come and speak with you because I do belong to several groups, the AOH and the Catholic War Veterans and the Notre Dame Club, and I am Irish. And the one thing I can say with great certainty is that there are a lot of people who agree with this unhappiness. And in that sense, I am speaking for them. We have a petition online in change.org. Go to St. Patrick's Day Parade and you'll find it. And in 3 days, we're over 2,000 signatures and growing. There are a lot of people who feel very strongly about this, who are not necessarily New Yorkers, who are perhaps not even Irish, but this is a cultural gem in the country. This has significance beyond the people who are immediately concerned. And I'm speaking for them. Because this is, I mean, you know, they say about Jesuits, if you put 5 Jesuits in a room, you get 6 opinions. The Irish are not unlike that. One of the great joys of living in Ireland, and I lived in Ireland for a while, you know, you go to a pub and you get your pint and you sit back and you have great discussions and you yell and you scream and you argue and you pound the table. We don't always agree. On this we agree. On this, the affiliate voices, the county associations, the memberships, all sorts of people agree that this is a bad idea. Now, what the parade may look like, who should or should not be admitted, we'll fight about that until, you know, Tuesday week. But that this is a bad idea, we agree on that. This should not happen for the history of the parade, for the future of the parade, for who we are as Irish. And that's who I'm speaking for.